The station sat crooked at the edge of a wide and wind-bitten nowhere. A plank of wood for a bench. A rusted tin sign that clanged like a sad bell every time the breeze passed through. And beside it sat a woman, large in frame, quiet in spirit, wrapped in a shawl stitched by her own hands, threads coming loose, like her faith in the world. She had no name here, just a suitcase with a broken clasp, and a slip of paper with the words Dry Creek Junction smudged from the sweat of her palms. Her name was Martha, and she was not what the West had been waiting for. The train pulled away in a cloud of black smoke. Shrieking like it, too, wanted to forget her. She stayed sitting, alone on that bench, like a book no one reached for on the shelf. Others had been claimed. A saloon girl with ringlets and rouge found her cowboy lover before her boots hit dirt. A mail-order bride was swept into the arms of a thin man with a crooked smile, both pretending they'd been sent what they asked for. Even a mangy dog had someone waiting, but not Martha. She had come west because there was nothing left east. No family, no friends. Just a failed promise from a man who had written fine letters, but turned cold when he saw her figure step off a train, like her body was a betrayal, like kindness had weight limits. And now she sat, watching the sun crawl higher. She didn't cry, not anymore. Tears dried up after too many nights spent praying to be smaller. No one was coming. She knew it then. A shadow, footsteps on gravel, slow, solid, like someone who didn't rush for much in life. She didn't look up at first, too proud for hope, but when she did, she saw a man, not young, not old, just weathered, like a barn that had stood through storms. He was tall, shoulders like fence posts, face marked by sun and time, with eyes that didn't squint in judgment, only in habit. He didn't smile, didn't say hello, didn't tip a hat, just looked at her for a long moment. Then said in a voice like worn leather, "You're cumin. With me." The words didn't land harshly. They just landed, soft, like a blanket tossed on weary shoulders. Martha blinked, once, twice, her lips parted, but no words came. The man didn't explain, didn't ask, just nodded toward a wagon tied a few yards off, a mule already shifting its weight like it was used to long waits. She wanted to ask why me, wanted to ask, what do you see when you look at me? But instead, she stood, because what he offered wasn't romance, wasn't salvation. It was something quieter, but just as sacred, a place. The road was long and lined with cottonwood trees, bending low from their own memories. Neither spoke much. The wagon creaked, the wind whispered. The mule snorted every mile or so like punctuation. She held her suitcase on her lap, though it was empty but for a comb, a hand-stitched handkerchief, and a biscuit she no longer wanted. The man finally spoke after an hour. Name's Silas Beckett. I got land. House needs keepin', animals need feedin'. I ain't expecting nothin' else. She nodded, heart drumming like a scared bird in her chest. Martha, she said, barely above the hum of wheels. Silas just grunted once, not unkindly, just acknowledging. The house came into view, just as the sun dropped behind the hills. A weather-beaten structure, with one window glowing faintly, a porch with a broken swing, 2 hens pecking at nothing near the door, and silence. That didn't come from emptiness, but from grief. She stepped down from the wagon, and her boots touched dirt. She would come to know like her own skin. Inside, the place smelled like wood smoke and old sorrow. There were no photographs, no flowers, just shelves lined with tools and tin cups. A bonnet hung by the door, untouched by time. He showed her to a small room with a narrow bed and said, simply, "You can rest here." No expectations, no remarks on her size, no questions about her past. Just space. And somehow, that was more generous than all the sweet words ever whispered to her in youth. That night, she lay awake listening to the wind curl through the cracks in the wall. She heard Silas moving in the other room, slow, purposeful, not clumsy, not lonely, just enduring. She thought of the girls who'd stepped off the train before her, corseted, courted, claimed, and here she was, unloved, but not unwanted. It was something, and something was better than the endless nothing that had followed her for years. She didn't cry that night, not because she wasn't sad, but because something inside her was beginning to shift. Not hope, exactly, not yet, but maybe the whisper of it. She awoke before the rooster the next morning, boiled water, found the flour tin, made biscuits from memory. Silas sat at the table, silent as steam curled from a chipped cup. She served him 2 biscuits, took one herself. He nodded, said, "Good," and that was it. Not much, but everything. There was a rhythm to the days that followed. Not a melody, not yet, but a pulse, slow and steady. Martha rose with the dawn, her wide palms learning the curve of every door handle, every skillet, every scratch in the kitchen table. She moved like someone who expected to be watched and judged, and was surprised when neither happened. Silas Beckett didn't hover. He worked the land, repaired the fence, rode into town twice a week, and came back with flour, beans, coffee. He spoke little, but his silence wasn't cruel. It was simply his way. Still, the house spoke in his stead, and it whispered of a woman who once laughed in these rooms. Her apron still hung behind the pantry door, her boots, smaller than Martha's hand, tucked beneath the bed. Martha never entered. No mention of her was made, but her ghost, not the haunting kind, but the hollow kind, filled the spaces between their words. One evening, Martha sat on the porch, shelling peas. The sun folded over the land like a quilt. The chickens roosted. The mules snored. Silas sat beside her, sharpening a blade with slow, thoughtful pulls. Not a threatening thing, just muscle memory. And then, out of nowhere, he said, her name was Clara. Just that, no more. But in those 4 words, something shifted in the dirt between them. Martha said nothing, just kept shelling peas. But her fingers trembled slightly, not in fear, but in knowing. She'd been brought into a house that still had a wife, not in body, but in spirit. And how could a woman compete with a ghost who had never disappointed, never aged, never gained weight? The next day, Martha cleaned the windows, then the pantry, then the root cellar. She did not do it to please. She did it because she believed in the dignity of clean spaces, in the quiet honor of putting a home back together, even when no one notices. That night, Silas left her a slice of apple pie, roughly made, slightly burnt. Left it on her windowsill like a note with no ink. She smiled into her pillow. Didn't eat it, not at first, but just the sight of it, that was enough. Days passed. The town took notice. Whispers began. That widower Beckett had brought home a fat woman. Some said she was a servant. Others said she was bought. One shopkeeper asked Silas outright, "You sure you want that one?" Silas said nothing, just laid exact change on the counter, picked up his nails and his can of peaches, and left. Martha heard the whispers, of course. She always had. Some people were born to silence rooms, others to fill them. Martha had always done both, and neither kindly. The weight she carried wasn't just on her hips or arms. It lived in the way people looked at her, like she had chosen it, like it was a sin to take up space without apology. But out here, it was different. Out here, the land didn't care how wide her shadow was. It only cared that she could carry buckets, knead dough, pull weeds. And Silas, well, Silas didn't say much, but he watched. Not in the way men usually watched women, with hunger or disdain, but with recognition, like he was watching someone survive in the same way he had. One night, while sweeping the front step, she found a moth fluttering by the lantern, big, awkward, beautiful, if you looked long enough. She cupped it gently in her hand and whispered, You're not ugly. You just weren't made for quick glances. Behind her a creak. Silas in the doorway. He said nothing. Just looked at her like he'd heard something meant for him. Sometimes she'd catch him glancing at her while she chopped wood. Not surprised by her strength, just softened by it once. She slipped and split her knuckle open. He was there. In a blink, wrapping it with cloth, his rough hands trembling slightly. He didn't say, "Be careful," he said. "That's a clean cut. You'll scar, but it'll heal straight." And in that moment, she thought, so will I. But at night, in the room that wasn't quite hers, she'd lie awake and wonder, what was she here for? Not a wife, not a servant, not a guest, just a woman who arrived and stayed and kept things going. Was that enough? Could being useful ever be enough to feel wanted? Then came the letter, folded in Silas's pocket when he returned from town. He handed it to her without a word. Inside, a scrawled message from the man who had once written her love letters, and then vanished after seeing her in person. "Heard you're living with Beckett. Guess you weren't as desperate as I thought. Still got that biscuit I gave you." There was no return address, just cruel ink and cowardice. Martha folded the letter without flinching, set it in the fire, watched it curl into nothing. Silas spoke, after a long pause. "You know that man?" She shrugged. "I used to think I did." He nodded, jaw tight. His hands gripped the back of a chair until the wood creaked. "Then, I didn't bring you here 'cause I pitied you." She looked up slowly. "Did you bring me here 'cause you were lonely?" A beat passed. Then, softly, "No. Brought you here 'cause I saw a woman who looked like she didn't belong to nobody. And I thought, maybe we could not belong together." It wasn't a declaration, wasn't poetry, but it was truth. And in the West, truth was more precious than gold. That night, she didn't cry. She unbraided her hair, let it fall wild around her shoulders, stood in front of the small mirror with its crack down the side, and for the first time in years, she didn't look away. The sky was not right that morning. It was swollen and heavy, like it held back to many unsaid things. Even the animals felt it, the mule restless, the hens quiet, the air thick with waiting. Martha stepped out barefoot, apron already tied, hair pinned back. She felt the weight in the wind. It reminded her of a moment before grief, when your body knows it's coming before your mind catches up. She needed dough, like it might keep the storm away. Silas was out mending the fence that the wind had teased loose the night before. Then the thunder spoke low, rolling, not angry, just undeniable. It came fast after that, clouds churning like boiling stew, rain slicing sideways. Silas burst through. The back door soaked to the bone. The barn roofs peeled back. The calf stuck. He moved to grab rope and gloves. Martha grabbed her shawl. "Stay in," he said, not unkind. "I'll handle it." But she was already moving. The water clawed at their ankles before they reached the barn. Wind shrieked through the slats. A beam had fallen, pinning the young calf to the mud. Silas tried lifting, straining, cursing under his breath. Martha knelt beside the calf, her full body soaking through, her hair uncoiling in thick ropes down her back. "Lift with me," she said, her voice clear in the storm. Silas paused, then nodded. Together they heaved, her bare feet sinking deep, his arms shaking, and then the beam gave. The calf scrambled free, but Martha collapsed into the mud, chest heaving, heart pounding. Silas dropped beside her. "Damn fool," he whispered, not angry, just scared. She looked at him, cheeks streaked with dirt, eyes wild and shining. "You think I'm some delicate flower?" She laughed, breathless. "I carried buckets since I was 6, hauled my own mother's body into the church when no one else would. This body ain't soft, Silas. It's strong." He looked at her like he'd never seen her before. Not properly, not fully, and for the first time. She saw herself reflected in his gaze, not as something too much or not enough, but as exactly what she was. The rain softened. They sat in the wet earth, the calf grazing nearby like nothing had happened. Silas cleared his throat. I brought you here, 'cause I thought you looked like me. She tilted her head. He continued, voice rough, like someone who'd been passed by too many times. Someone who still kept going. Martha closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were steady. I didn't ask to be taken. He nodded. I know. But I reckon I'm glad you did, she said softly. 'Cause now I know I can stay, not for you, for me. They rose, side by side, no hand-holding. No kiss. Just two soaked souls finally standing on the same ground. That evening, Silas built a fire not just for warmth, but for comfort. Martha laid out dry blankets and soup with herbs she'd dried herself. The air between them was different. Now, not romantic, not yet, but possible. He sat across from her, his fingers turning a cup slowly. Then, I don't talk much, he said. Martha smiled. I don't need much talk. A pause. But I see, he added. She met his eyes. So, do one? The next morning, Martha stepped into the barn alone. The calf nuzzled her palm. She looked up at the broken roof, a crack where the sky had entered and laid everything bare, and she thought, maybe the storm hadn't ruined things. Maybe it had. Washed away what no longer mattered. Silas came in behind her, held something in his hand, a small object, wrapped in blue cloth. He held it out. Inside, a ribbon, faded green, worn, but clean. Clara used to wear it. He paused. I ain't asking you to be her. Martha held the ribbon in both hands. I wouldn't know how, she whispered. Then, a long silence. But I could tie it to my braid, just to hold her spirit here, if that's all right. Silas nodded once, more grateful than words could carry. She tied it that night, wore her hair loose, with the ribbon trailing behind like a flag of memory, not to replace, not to erase, but to honor, and to begin. It started with a loaf of bread. Martha pulled it from the oven at dawn, the crust golden, the scent rising like a hymn. She set it on the sill to cool and stood back. Then she made another, and another. By mid-morning, the table was covered, pies lined like soldiers, cornbread cooling in cloth, jars of blackberry preserves glowing in the sun like stained glass. Out back, Silas was hanging up lanterns. He didn't ask why she was baking. Didn't need to. She had told him the night before, sitting together on the porch in silence. I want folks to see us? He only nodded. Then we'll let Day spread word, in the simplest way. A note tacked on the general store door, handwritten in Martha's careful script. Come hungry, come curious, come as you are. Supper at the Beckett place. Dusk, no, RSVP. No explanation, just a call into the world, from a woman who once sat alone at a train station with no name called out to her. Dusk came slow, as if unsure if it was welcome. The first wagon rolled in, an older couple with skeptical eyes and empty hands. Then came a young family, dusty and shy, a man from the feed store, a pair of saloon girls, and finally, even the preacher. Led by curiosity more than faith, Martha wore the blue dress she'd stitched herself. It hugged her arms, her waist, her hips unapologetically, and in her braid, the green ribbon swayed gently in the wind. She did not hide, and she did not serve like a servant. She hosted with pride, with peace. The table was long, planks borrowed from the barn, covered with linen and lanterns. They ate under the open sky, candles flickering like fireflies. Silas carved meat. Martha passed biscuits. No speeches, just food, warmth, surprise. Because, as each person tasted her cooking, something shifted. There was a reverence in it. Not for the food itself, but for what it meant. This woman, this large, quiet woman, had given them something beautiful, with no demand and no disguise. Conversation bloomed like evening primrose. Someone laughed. Someone cried softly into their plate, for reasons they didn't say aloud. Children ran barefoot. The preacher nodded once and said, "God sends angels in all shapes. I reckon he likes variety." Near the end of the meal, a shopkeeper leaned toward Silas. "She yours?" Then Silas didn't flinch. He looked at Martha the way she brushed flour from her skirt. How her laugh came from the belly, full and honest. Then he stood, held out something small. It shimmered under the lantern light. A ring, simple. No stone, just gold, warm from his pocket. He didn't kneel, didn't perform, just spoke. "I want to walk beside you, not ahead of you, if you'll let me." The table fell still. Even the wind stopped. Martha turned slowly, her eyes unreadable. She looked at the ring, then at his face. "I already been walking beside you," she said, her voice soft as cotton. "You just didn't know." She took the ring, slid it on, and then, for the first time, Silas smiled. A real smile, one that came from a place long locked shut. The feast ended like a hymn, not with clapping, but quiet joy. People drifted away in twos and threes, some with full bellies, some with hearts changed. One woman whispered on her way to the wagon, "She's no mail order bride. She's the lady of this land now." Later, as the stars settled in, Martha sat alone on the porch. A little girl had stayed behind, daughter of one of the women from town. She looked up at Martha and asked, plainly, "Were you always this pretty?" Martha looked down at her, eyes soft. She pulled the girl into her lap. "Only once I stopped trying to be someone I wasn't," she said. "Only once I saw myself the way I was made, not the way I was measured." The girl rested her head against Martha's chest. Safe, loved. Silas joined her after putting out the last lantern. They didn't speak. They just sat hand in hand, not needing anything more than this moment and the long open land around them. The West had made room for her, not with fanfare, not with applause, but with truth and a seat at the table that had always been hers. Some folks are measured by the weight they carry, but the wisest among us know it's not about what you weigh, it's about what you hold. If you've ever felt too much or not enough, let this tale remind you. Sometimes, the place that truly fits you is the one you build with your own hands. If this story found a home in your heart, give it a like, drop a comment. Tell us where in this wide old world you're watching from. Subscribe for more Wild West tales, stories that remind us all it ain't never too late for a second beginning.